So if you haven't heard about it, Disney's making a card game. Now, it's not really much of a surprise, considering that everyone and their mother seems to be making a card game nowadays. So I thought I'd give my 2, maybe 3 cents on it. Now, seeing as this is an early preview of sorts, we don't have much to go on. We have a title, we have this couple of cards, and one more, and that is quite literally it. But this does actually let us know more about the game than you'd think at first. While we only have 7 cards to talk about, there is a good bit of information we can glean from there and get a little bit of an idea of what the game's going to play like, even if we're not going to see the whole thing until at least a year. Now, I've seen a lot of articles, this one itself by Polygon, going on and on about how this is supposed to be their answer to Magic the Gathering, or their challenge to Magic the Gathering. And sure, one of the primary developers of the game seems to have a storied history on the Magic the Gathering team, which bodes well that the game will be designed well. But come on. Every time we see a card game that's supposed to be the challenger to this, the killer of that, the dethroner, the whatever, it never happens. I'm sure Lorcana will come out. It'll be good. Maybe it'll even escape the 2-year curse. But is it going to kill Magic? I don't think 7 cards a year out is enough to say for sure if it's going to kill Magic. Okay, enough of that. Let's look at the cards themselves, and I'd like to say, well, there's only a few couple of cards. They actually do glean us a bit more information about this game than you would kind of think. So let's start by talking about what we do know and what's pretty obvious. So first off, we got 6 colors: red, gray, purple, green, blue, and yellow. Now, is this gray going to be a generic sort of color, like a colorless, or is it going to be a full color? I don't know. The next thing we can kind of notice is that we have a very wide swath of mana values. We've got all the way down from 1 to as high as 9, with pretty much every cost in between there. So I'm not certain what the resource system in this game is going to be like, but if we're going to go as high as 9, that makes me think that the resource system for this game should be at least a little bit fair if you've got a big 9 drop in your first set. Now it seems too like as a sort of moniker for color, we have these symbols down here that might come into play later on as shorthands for the colors themselves. Now obviously, attack, defense, not much to say there. Though I will say, with the attributes, I do like this distinction between Storyborn versus Dreamborn, or even, with Stitch, Floodborn. I'm not sure what they're necessarily going to do with that, but I think this might be an indicator of how they're going to try and divide the different aspects of the Disney franchises into kind of recognizable wholes. You know, Robin Hood came out of stories. Stitch is an alien, so maybe Flood is their shorthand for everything alien. Stuff like that. So the next thing I want to talk about is the difference between what's these named abilities and what is sort of a trait, because there is seemingly a difference. Now, on most characters, you're going to have these named abilities. Now, some of them seem to be enter the battlefield style effects, but others are more continuous style effects like Robin Hood's Good Shot. However, you can see some design philosophy where Good Shot is an effect that specifically only happens while he's in play and on your turn, whereas Stitch's trait effect is something that happens in your hand. So I think already we're starting to see some good card design that is the difference between, a bold trait effect, something that's permanent on the card, even happens while it's in your hand. So for instance, his Shift 4 seems like he's going to be a almost Digimon style deck where you're playing on top and building up a bigger Stitch over the course of the game, versus the difference between what is effectively a continuous ability that doesn't work in your hand, but goes into play while it's on the field. Next up, I'm pretty sure this is going to be a crit of some sort. The amount of damage you're going to deal when this character presumably connects or hits your opponent. Now, I think the next thing we can kind of glean about how this game is going to play is specifically the text on evasive. Makes me feel like the character versus character combat in this game is going to be a little bit more involved than something like Magic. Or there's just going to be more keywords such as evasive that make combat, attacks and blocks a little bit more tricky. So this could be indicative of maybe characters attack one at a time instead of like a big attack phase where you go with everyone, thus meaning making it so that you need these specific keywords to block. Or this could just be like Magic where you have 300 versions of unblockable. Another little tidbit that I like, not much to say about it, but putting a little symbology to doing your tap mechanic, love to see it. And hell, even using exert, I like that too. Going a little bit deeper into the wording discussion, I thought Maleficent's text gives us a little look into basically what the rulebook looks like. So as I mentioned before with Robin Hood, it seems that enter the battlefield effects are just going to be part of the skill text itself. It's fine, straightforward. It may lead to flicker effects being a little too strong later on in the game, but we'll see. Dragonfire. When you play this character, you may banish chosen opposing character. So, a couple things. You may, love to see it. Banish, it's just destroy, but kid-friendly. I think it should function mostly the same. Chosen, that kind of makes me think of, well, okay, now we can have a hexproof style keyword to prevent choosing. Opposing, instead of enemy or opponent, I guess. And character. Well, now we know that these are characters. Now, as far as mechanics go, I think that's as much as we're going to be able to glean for now, or at least until they show us a little bit more. So let's talk a little bit about the art. First, let's start with what I do like, so that I don't sound super negative. And might I say, the art is overall fantastic. I like the most of the symbology on stuff. I really like the symbol for the mana costs. This little attack and defense symbol is very nice. I really like these color symbols too. Even this crit symbol is neat. Though I do like what they've got going on at the bottom of the cards. Nice space for Illustrator. Got your relevant information. While this down here might eventually be more space for like set codes and that type of thing. The one thing you certainly must appreciate, especially considering how few card games do it nowadays, we actually have flavor text. And it's pretty original flavor text too. And hell, more than that, we don't just have flavor text, we have lore. So reading through Elsa's text, recreated by magical ink, Elsa found herself in an unfamiliar new world. Fortunately, ice works the same everywhere. So that kind of already tells us that Lorcana's entire deal is that it's perhaps taking all of the different Disney tales, or really the Disney catalog of IPs. Expect to see Marvel and Star Wars sets eventually. And then I guess in a similar way to how in Magic you supposedly summon your creatures from the Aether themselves, I guess their equivalent is being recreated by magical ink. Now that I think about it, magical ink, huh? When do I get my Epic Mickey set? Now, unfortunately, Lorcana does something that I really don't like, which is to take very good art and then relegate it to only occupying half of the card, while the other half of the card is just text and gray backgrounds. Now, could they remedy it by having their full arts extend downwards? They certainly could, but I think they've perhaps somewhat undermined this by choosing to put the names down here, and specifically with these very large borders of just color behind them. Because even if you do extend this down, it's the rest of this image barely even covers this too. So even when we get full arts, is it even going to be the whole card with art? Or is it just going to be this tiny little box? So, with all that being said, what is there to say about Lorcana? Well, from what I can glean, it seems to be handled pretty well on the development side. I can already see some good mechanical and design choices, and we've only seen 7 cards. So really, we're just gonna have to wait until we get the next batch of cards or gameplay reveal or what have you to see what else we can expect from Lorcana.